Related.
And we're live.
Oh, wow. That was quick.
Are you
I
serious?
told
right
you.
now?
I told you I was hitting the button.
Wow. All right. Welcome.
Yeah, in mid conversation, and I don't. Well, we can edit out anything weird later.
Yeah, we were talking smack about some people. So.
There's no weird stuff to edit. I don't know of anything exciting to talk about beforehand. I got nothing, man. So if you
There's
guys,
a few things.
if you guys got something on your mind,
It's going to be a nice day today. That's pretty exciting.
50 degrees.
Yeah.
What?
50 and sunny.
And sunny.
So
I like it.
we
Yeah.
need to go get our shorts out.
Not there yet.
Yeah, I'm not there yet either. But,
Do this against
but
a heat wave.
you do you.
Okay, I'll do me. Fine. I didn't even wear a jacket in today. Just came in with a T-shirt
Yeah.
like I own the place.
Wow.
So
All right. I got a jacket in the car. I didn't actually put it on, but I am prepared
okay.
in the event
Good.
that one is needed.
I wore
In the event that you go for a walk, a long walk,
Yeah.
like a hike.
Yeah, which it's not a real high probability that's going to happen, but you never know.
Chance of hike 0. Come on, Chad. Let's just call it out.
I'm being gracious to myself in this.
Yeah. Keep hope alive.
Yeah.
Anything going on?
No, the grandkid, like I think, broke my nose yesterday. It's just killing me, man.
Lincoln
I'm
had
surprised
enough.
it didn't have black eyes this morning because I heard it crack.
You just had enough of your antics and just finally popped you one?
So yeah, well no, my wife. We got my wife this huge. It's basically an oversized dog bed, pet bed.
You said that the other day.
It's kinda funny.
She lays in it.
She wanted it for her birthday,
What?
and so we all went in on it because it was not cheap, and had it specially ordered and made. You know, she wishes she was one of her animals. I guess I don't know.
Does she identify as a dog?
She loves it, dude. So she pulls this thing up in front of the wood stove and like just lays in this oversized dog bed.
Is there a picture of this somewhere?
Nope. I'll get you one. So anyway, he loves it. When he comes over, he runs up and like somersaults into it. And I was laying in there yesterday when we were watching it.
Whoa.
Wait, for the first time, finally tried it.
Oh.
And homie just boom, just somersaulted back of his head and I just heard my nose
Do you think
crack.
maybe
It just cracked.
God was trying to teach you a lesson?
No,
maybe?
No, that's the first thing I thought. God is not pleased with your purchase.
Right. you weren't wearing Crocs while you're doing this, were you?
No.
Yeah,
but
I don't
Chad,
want to hear nothing about those ever
no
again.
Crocs in my house.
All right.
Wow.
So we don't have to
Just
worry
checking.
about that. I do have Mac Daddies laying around, but I wasn't even wearing my Mac Daddies. So anyway, my nose is killing, dude. Like every time I touch, like it's bad, like the bridge of it, and
No.
it's bad. Kid's got a hard head.
I've been scratched a lot, and I've been, that kind of stuff, but I've never been just whacked by one of my grandkids.
Yeah, I haven't either.
Yet.
My grandson likes to pull my beard. And now that he's
Yeah.
getting bigger, like the tugs are getting a little harder. I'm afraid he's going to yank out a handful of it one day.
Yeah, they're gonna start getting violent, and because that's what What was it that Vody Bachman said? Like the reason God makes them so small is so they won't kill you.
Yeah.
So they won't kill you,
And they're cute, so we won't kill them.
and He makes them so cute that we won't kill them.
Yeah.
Yes,
Vipers
works.
and diapers, I think he says.
Yeah.
that's right.
So back up for a second. Mac Daddies.
Oh, shoes.
Just your little house slippers,
Oh.
your little slip-ons. You know that.
When I was growing up, Mac Daddy was something else.
Yeah, no, I get that it has several meanings,
Okay.
possible meanings, but for us down in SoCal, well, it still had several meanings, but it was the Mac Daddies were your slip-ons, your lazy
All right.
shoes, man. Sometimes you'd even go out in public with them.
Okay.
Well, some people.
For me in like middle school, it meant you were like the ladies' man. You were
if you were a Mac
you were
Daddy,
a Mac Daddy.
singular.
Yeah, Mac Daddy.
Yeah, Mac Daddies.
Okay.
The Mac Daddy or
Means there's
the Daddy
there's two of
Mac.
them.
Yeah. It was Mac. It probably should have been Daddy Mac. But it was
Jump.
Mac Daddy.
I'm just thinking of crisscross right now. That's all I got. That
pants on
that stupid
backwards.
song where they wore their pants backwards. Yeah.
That's where Ty got it.
Yeah.
He liked
maybe.
crisscross.
They were inside out, though, too, in fairness.
Yes, they were.
All right. Well, thanks for the clarification.
You're very
that helps.
welcome, sir.
All right. I'm jumping in, guys.
Now that we're
Jump,
stimulated,
Jump.
Jumping
Yeah,
in.
exactly. A couple questions that have been coming in, or recommendations from people over the last several months is, how to try to attract younger families, younger people into the church. I kind of tasked a couple of people that are in that age group to, ask their friends, kind of, what would it take? What are you looking for in a church? What could we be doing different to see if there is something we could do? And it's been an interesting kind of results. A lot of the things that have come in are a little bit surprising. And the questions come up, is this something we can accommodate? should accommodate? Would it really solve anything? So these are the kind of questions we wrestle with as pastors and try to figure some things out. And then there's been some stats that have come out recently that say that the membership of people in churches has declined now for the first time below 50% in America, down to 47% of people that are members of houses of worship. And that includes more than just, Protestant churches. But they say that when it comes to adults born before 1946, 66% of people still go to church. Baby boomers, it's 58%. Gen X, it's 50%. And then millennials, it's 36% go to church. And Gen Zers, they don't have enough data, but they assume it's in that same ballpark. And so, we've kind of seen this decline. It's not just here at the door where we're missing young families. And then, of course, there's been some articles that have come out that bring claims saying this is why they're leaving. This is why people are leaving the church, not just young people, but all ages.
Yeah.
And as I look at some of these claims, and I sent you guys the list out that I kind of condensed. It's not condensed, but it's a pretty big list. As far as why people aren't coming, the question that I had is: are these valid things? Are these things that we do see and agree with? And if they are, what is there anything we can do to fix them? And then I wanted to kind of transition from that into the reasons you guys are seeing. Maybe that these claims are, some of them I agree with, some of them I might not. But then what are some reasons we are seeing and think that, and can we do anything about it, or should we, is kind of the question. So that's kind of in a nutshell what we're going to be talking about today. Yeah.
This is kind of a controversial subject, right? And every church deals with this. Like they do something with what we're talking about, whether they know what it is or not. We're all asking the questions of how do we get more people in, whether it's young people or older people. I mean, obviously we want the church to grow.
Yeah.
And then sometimes, and then what's healthy, like what's within the bounds of, validity for the church to do, and then what's not. And that's where it gets sketchy, is because you've got some people employing things that the church shouldn't be employing for the sake of getting numbers.
Right. Well, and I thought about, maybe we'll talk about it some today, and maybe we'll talk about it at another podcast, but the different models of churches that exist out there. And so there's the attractional model, which is kind of the seeker-friendly. We've been accused of that before.
Well, I think in ways someone could probably point at something and go, there it is right there. And it's like, okay, sure.
But really the goal is find a way to get them in at all costs, kind of thing, and then make sure you don't do anything that would cause them to want to leave. So that's kind of the danger of it. And then there's the missional church, where it's we gather as Christians so that we can then scatter out into the community, which we're that way too. So we could be called both of those things. Some people view church as something that's just for focus on the unbeliever that comes in, and others focus on more just the believers that are there, and they're not really thinking about the unbeliever. There's all these different things we think about. When the goal is to try to win people that have kind of walked away from church back in, it gets interesting as far as what you're willing to do to make that happen. So
and then what it ends up doing to the church. Correct. If you succeed at it. And I'm sure we're going to get to that, but that there's problems.
Yeah.
Implications, These things play out somehow.
All I could think about as an example was you guys were in youth. You guys had youth groups growing up. Yeah. And I remember in the 90s in Coeur d'Alene, we had a huge youth group, and this thing was massive. And there were so many kids coming. Most of them weren't Christians. The reason they were coming was because it was fun. I mean, it was so much fun. We were doing all kinds of crazy things. What was missing, though, were Christian kids, holiness, purity, the gospel, the church. Right. It was pretty much just a really cool youth activity kind of a place. Yeah. And that's what it was. And it was successful by the world standards because of the numbers.
Yeah.
And it was fun. Kids wanted to come. But the stuff we were dealing with, it was horrendous, man. It was, and the Christian kids that were there started to leave because they felt like there was nothing there for them. And it was kind of weird. And I feel like that's a little microcosm maybe of what we're trying to do in the bigger church.
Yeah, well, and a lot of these things, too, start off with, I think, kind of a noble ambition, right? We want to get people in and attract people and grow and those kinds of things. But, what ends up happening over time is just kind of these little compromises that maybe we don't look at them as compromises.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, you're in a place doing things. It's like, how did we get here?
Yeah. Yeah, we don't identify some of those things up front as dangers,
Right.
or potential dangers until they become one,
Right.
like a reality of a danger in the church.
Yeah.
And then you're going, oh my goodness, but it looks so good.
Yeah.
It seems so right.
But
the
I
other-
think another disconnect, and maybe you're going to go here, so sorry if I'm jumping ahead, but like another disconnect is just, and we've talked about this before, just kind of segregated ministry in the church of, we're going to have, the old people over here and the young people over here and the young marrieds over here and the career people over here. And maybe there's some value in, having some specific ministries to specific groups, but with young people in particular, you raise them in Sunday school and youth group, and then all of a sudden, they're 18. It's like, okay, now go be a part of big church, and there's this huge disconnect,
Right.
Because there's no relationships, and they've kind of been in their own sandbox, this whole time.
I think I think we're gonna, when we try to answer kind of like the solution to this, I think it kind of goes to that.
Yeah.
So we'll kind of
All right.
kind of come around at the end maybe about that. But I think one of the things we need to acknowledge is we're all Gen Xers now. We're all getting up there.
Which,
in
by the way,
years.
is the best generation.
Yeah, I think
that's ever
I think that
existed.
goes without
You're,
saying.
you're not part of the greatest generation?
Gen X, if you want to call Gen X. No, I'm not a boomer. And
Or a
you're
boomer?
talking about the no.
Boomer, that's what I meant. Great generation is the next
No,
one up.
it's the next one
You're
up.
older than us, so I thought you might be the next generation up.
No, Chad.
So,
Gen X is like
Okay, boomer.
70.
we're all the same.
Gen X is like 67.
I think
like
66 maybe. I'm right in there. I'm right at the cusp.
So,
But
so you're almost a boomer.
no, I'm a Gen X.
Yeah.
100%.
You're closer to a boomer than David and me.
Fair enough. Point is, as
You act like a boomer.
yeah, I do.
You dress like a boomer.
I have for a long time. As an okay boomer kind of person, the point I'm getting at is that we get locked into kind of our way of thinking, our way of doing things. And so some of these claims that we're going to hear about, we need to, rather than just quickly poo-poo them and say, we're just going to shut these things down. These young whippersnappers don't know what they're talking about. We need to listen. We need to try to learn, and we need to try to adapt where it makes sense. Not everywhere, but I think we do have some things to learn, and just
Well, I think the Bible gives us freedom, right? There's
Yeah.
things the church absolutely does
Yeah.
that are non-negotiable in our scriptures, and then there's a lot of things that it doesn't clearly define,
right.
which means that there's room for creativity and imagination and context.
Right.
Just paying attention to what's in front of you and what might maximize, you going forward. So like there's room in areas to do that, but there's always within those rooms possible consequences or dangers as a result of our choices. So
Yeah.
there's things we got to continue to protect, even though we have some liberty in areas. So.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I'm going to kind of just go down some of the claims that when you read articles about why people are leaving, this is what is being said. And then you guys can answer the question, is that valid? And is it something that is fixable? So first one is that the church is too judgmental or intolerant or condemning or hypocritical. Those are kind of all the same idea. But is that a real valid claim?
Yes and no.
Yes.
Yes and no.
Valid and fixable.
Yeah. Some of that's earned.
Yeah.
Some of it's earned.
Yeah.
Some of it's a false interpretation of
Right.
something that people don't like,
Yeah.
because we do claim some absolute truths when it comes to holiness and what's revealed as far as that, and so we can always be labeled a hypocrite because we're upholding these things that we don't all perform all the time.
Yep.
So
I read a social media post from a well-known Christian guy. You'd probably know his name if I threw it out there. And not verbatim, but something to the effect that, like, I need a break from, people that have certainty about their theology and some like things along those lines of, like, just a guy that I think is becoming offendable, as he gets older and more adverse to, not the word I'm looking for, but just claims of theology to say that this is absolute truth, and he's basically saying, I need a break from that. It's exhausting me.
Yeah, I think some of that we can't avoid when it comes to we're going to stand on the Word of God and its principles and what it teaches. But the idea of that self-righteous Christian who looks down on everybody and everything and is very judgmental and that kind of a thing, the church could do with less of that.
Right.
yeah,
And when you immediately walk into a church and feel judgment from people, that's a really negative thing.
Right.
And one of the things I love about the door over the years, we've heard it and we continue to hear it, is that people can walk in here and they won't immediately feel judged by the presence of the people or by the atmosphere. Now, when the word when we start to preach, I hope they are, I hope they feel judged by God's word,
Right.
in whatever, that needs to happen way, but not by the people.
Right.
So,
I mean, the Bible tells us that God's kindness leads us to repentance. right? And,
Yep.
and that's not, that we need to soft sell things or anything like that, but just the point is that, judgmentalism and self-righteousness isn't the recipe to lead people to repentance.
Yeah. That's good. But yeah, tolerance or acceptance at all cost isn't going to, we
Yeah.
can't do that. So,
Right.
okay, good. Next one is the church is not authentic. So there's no realness in the church there in Christianity. There's nobody being vulnerable or honest.
There's some you just got to look hard for.
Yeah.
It's not prevalent.
Yeah.
I would say with the church as a whole has definitely moved into kind of a disposition of not really showing your cards and acting
Right.
like you're something you're not. And a lot of it's because of the first one where we're,
Yep.
we're trying to not look like sinners so that we can appear to be a step above everybody else and can't be labeled hypocrites.
Right.
And
Yeah.
in trying to not be labeled hypocrites, we're trying to look like something we're not. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff that's just not authentic. There's a lot of people that walk around that are completely fake.
Yeah.
So
Now, and I can see where that's a turnoff, and especially
Yeah.
younger generations that have kind of seen that for a long time. It kind of disgusts them at a different level, maybe than even though I think it disgusts us too.
Sure.
It is something that we don't like, that kind of fake polished veneer where we're pretending to be something we're not, or pretending like everything's okay when it's not. And
Yeah.
I think we've tried to, as a church, model from the front even that we're not that way.
Right.
right. And it doesn't mean every time you have a bad thought or a bad day that you come in and throw it all over everybody and go, there, I'm not being fake. You can't accuse me of being fake. That's not what we're talking
Or a
about.
bad diagnosis.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. At the same time, the opposite end of that spectrum is that, like, authenticity is messy, and we have talked about that and experienced that. And
Right.
for everybody that claims that the church isn't authentic or real, when the church is authentic and real, people don't always like that either.
Yeah, it is the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that you can go so far with that it becomes just
Just a mess
everybody's just
fest.
airing their stuff in a gross
Right.
way, almost
Yep.
boasting about how
Yep.
that, and for a while there was that thing like, we suck. That was kind of a thing, a mantra at the door that people picked up on, and it came out of a sermon I think we preached, and it was basically trying to explain that we're not righteous in and of
You can
ourselves.
say that I preached it, Brent. You don't
I
have to
don't-
act like you had a part in it.
No, it was okay. I remember it was a powerful sermon, but people
Well,
latched
yeah.
onto the wrong thing. It's kind of like when we have the
I think it was in Romans.
Yeah.
Like point number 1, you suck.
Yeah. and people. It's the
All
same
of
with
sin
the,
and fallen short of the glory
It's
of
the
God.
same with the sinners only shirt we had.
Yeah.
It means something, but other people
That
took
one's
it to
still
mean
legit.
it's still legit. But people have taken it the wrong way, like
Yeah.
to where
It's their badge.
yeah, it's like sinners only, and it's like, well, that's not exactly what we're talking about here. But anyway, that's one of the things I think we do pretty well, though, as far as the trying to be authentic and making sure that the phrase we don't like to say anymore is that it's okay to not be okay. Most churches, that's not a real thing.
Right.
It's not okay to not be okay. You don't even keep that to yourself. Don't show it. And here we're a gospel-centered church, which means we're a messy church,
Yep.
and it's okay to we want to see people continually grow and press into Christ and be conformed into His image. But
Yep.
but if it's okay to be right where you're at.
Yeah, and I think we have in the DNA of our church, that you guys over a long time, long before I came along, have built into the church was, people love people that aren't okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When somebody does stand up and say, I'm not okay, there aren't the judgmental stares and comments and shunning or things like that people typically surround those people and come alongside them, and it's a neat thing to see.
Yeah, we're imperfect people following a perfect God.
Right.
And building that culture has been obviously important to us, and I think it's come along pretty good.
Yeah, it's something we want to continue to maintain, and hopefully don't lose that, because it's a big deal.
Right.
I almost
starts
feel,
with us.
I almost feel like this is one of the appeals of house churches in general, is that there's more. You're more apt to see that kind of a culture just because of the size of it.
Yeah.
You've got people that are pretty comfortable with each other, and there's kind of a trust that's built in with that group, and so over time I think that's something that just is able to naturally happen.
Right.
Where in most churches where you're seeing yourself once a week and it's on a level that's not very intimate and not very close, it's just way too easy to do what you need to do to get through that hour and a half looking
Right.
good and feeling good, and no one's none the wiser, so.
This is a good way to segue into the next one, because this one I find ironic. People say that another claim is that there's no connection, no community. And again,
Not if you're only a Sunday morning Christian.
well, yeah, there's all kinds of
that's on you,
opportunity for
whoever said
these
that.
for this to happen. It's just most people, you're not going to get it on a Sunday morning, and in a large church where people sneak in, sneak out, and then complain there's no connection or community. It's kind of like, well, yeah, I mean, clearly. And in the articles we were reading, it was like people started, rather than doing church in a building, they were growing vegetables in a vegetable garden and sitting around a fire and
doing
yoga. And, it was that kind of stuff. And that was how they were finding connection and community. But this is one of those things where as much connection and community you want, you can probably have. Hopefully we've created those opportunities for people. It's just a matter.
There's nothing wrong with building
it.
community around whatever your affinities are. If you like to garden or exercise or whatever,
Shoot guns,
America, whatever. but as the church and as Christians, the greatest affinity that we have is our union with Christ. And so we strive to build community around that as kind of the preeminent thing,
right?
In addition to all these other affinities or things that we gather around. And I think sometimes churches miss out. They try to make the hobbies or whatever they are the primary thing, and miss out on that we all are united in Christ.
Yeah, I think we've talked before, mentioned the how there's kind of the reality in churches of the inner circle and then the outer circle of congregants, of people. And the inner circle are pretty much the inner circle because they've made themselves the inner circle.
Right.
They're people that invest and they show up to things.
Value it.
And they engage and they create connections and relationships, and they're very part of what's going on because they've chosen to be.
Yeah.
And then there's the outer circle that just shows up. I don't want to say just to check the box, but in a way it is, because they're isolated. They're on the out.
Yeah.
They're on the perimeter, and there is no relationship going on. But they like it that way. They've chosen for it to be that way. So yeah. Basically the sky's the limit when it comes to this. Like you can do as much or as little as you want to do when it comes to engagement.
Well, I think so much of this would be kind of the connection or community on their terms. So the church has got a very clear recipe for this. In Acts chapter 2, you can look at what the church has offered, what it's supposed to be. And it's really about sharing your lives in a vulnerable, intimate kind of way where you really are. And I think this is actually the answer to the question of all the stuff we're talking about. When that begins to happen, the rest of the stuff begins to take place. You find connection for your family, for your kids. Everything changes when you get to this level. And we've all kind of gotten to that point in church where you have built-in grandmas and grandpas. You have built-in, some of the things I was getting back as far as responses when I asked these questions were, it'd be really cool if there was a time when, kids could learn to change oil or bake or sew, or, it was like, let's create a program with volunteers and we can show up when we want to show up, do that thing and leave. And it's like, or maybe if we just connected as the church is supposed to connect, you begin to learn all that stuff in a normal, organic way all the time. And it's always kind of going on. You've got built-in babysitters. You've got built-in, accountability. You've got all the things that the church needs can happen that way without, but that's, it's a big ask.
Me and Carrie were raised in large part by the church family. I mean, to your point, we got married at 19. We moved up here right away. We didn't have any family around.
Right.
We immediately got into a church, and that became our family. I mean, they just completely smothered us with love and attention and care, and we were young. And so a lot of what I learned as far as being a dad and work ethic and all those things came from the guys around me that weren't blood, but that were church family. And same with Carrie, and being a mom and being a wife and baking and basic stuff like that. Most of that was learned from being from the church family. So, and then even after my parents finally moved up here years later, the church family never ceased to be less of a family. It's still just as big as a family as my original family. So anyway.
Well, we see that happening in the community groups. When it's a multi-age kind of a community group, you see all these things kind of taking place. But again, I think what people are asking for is a class. Like we want a class on parenting or a class on marriage where we can come, the kids are over here doing their thing. We come into a class, we learn what we need to learn, and then we're out of there in an hour.
This is the
And-
program-oriented
and it's the program.
mindset
So,
that
so
the
it's
church
again,
is
it's
in
on
now.
their terms, and I get that, and those can be fine things to
Sure.
do. Don't misunderstand. But then there's that idea where you immerse yourself in the life and culture of a church and community, and all these things are just kind of working themselves out in a normal, natural way.
How much are you going to learn about marriage as a young couple? Excuse me, if you attach yourself to the couple that's been married for 50 years.
Yeah.
Well, and again, a lot of those classes
you know,
end up being the same people at the same age, and they're all learning together, and they're hoping to glean something, but they're really just complaining about how hard parenting or marriage is.
Right.
So the whole church being together is a benefit there.
Yeah, and the Bible actually gives a recipe. That it's the job of the older people to invest in the younger people, and converse to that. Like younger people should flock to the older people for that very reason.
Yeah.
And learn from them and glean what they can, and that's just God's simple organic design.
Yeah. Okay, the next one on here. This is kind of an important one that I tend to want to just disregard, but it's that they don't have a voice, they're not valued, they're not listened to. For the younger generation who kind of
They've earned that.
see, I mean, for the
All
younger
right, next.
for the younger generation that's grown up basically feeling like through social media they're heard, and they really have a voice at times, and then they come into the church and they're not valued or important. It's got to be hard because they're really used to that kind of an
So
idea.
that's valid and not valid.
Yeah, correct.
So I mean, it's valid because, gosh, how do you say it? Because a lot of times we're not coming around the younger people like we could be.
Yeah.
We are putting them in their own room and in their own sandbox and saying, have fun. There you go. Rather than bringing them to our side and doing life with them,
Right.
And really adopting them, in life. So yes, invalid in that's a completely sinful, selfish, self-centered. It's all about me, and no one's better at that than young people. They don't know yet that they're all about themselves in ways that are ridiculous, and so everything we approach is about us, and
Yeah.
and no one can meet those expectations that we have of ourselves at that age because we're just so internal. We're just so about us. So yeah, I mean it's valid and not valid.
That's not necessarily limited to young people. I mean,
It's not
our
limited to
churches
young
are full of consumers that
It's not
their
limited.
whole mindset.
But I think they're
and
better at it.
approach to church is what's in it for me, right? And we constantly have to battle that as pastors.
Well, and I would say that it's always been this way. Younger people are ignored. The older generations don't listen to them. They don't know what they're talking about. There's that attitude. It's always, I mean, I remember that feeling that way. The difference is that I think there's this idea that it's not that way. Again, social media creates this thing where I'm heard and important, and then you come to church and you're not. So there's that disconnect there. I think we need to do a better job of listening, and I think we do. I mean, even the last couple of weeks, we got together with some younger people that listened to their concerns about some things, tried to learn from them. We're trying to be open about that kind of stuff. But I think it is something that you don't just shut them down. Hopefully.
We care about what they think.
Yes.
But by creating these programs and all these games and stuff that they love and are supposedly bringing them in, what we're really doing is putting them away because we don't want to deal with them during those years.
Right. Yeah.
We don't want the kind of thoughts that they have, the kind of ideas that they have.
Right.
We don't want to hear the things that they have to say because it's just annoying. We've been there. We've grown up past that. Just get them through this stage.
Right.
And so we create this other thing that's supposed to appease what we're not giving them, and it doesn't.
Yeah.
So we lose them.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah, and again, that would be something we can't really budge on a whole bunch. But okay, I got a lot here to go, so I'm going to try to move through these quick. Too focused on power and money. Churches, that's the reason why people leave, and that's something
earned
that
sometimes.
I think it can certainly be earned. I don't think we're guilty.
Amen.
I don't think we're guilty of that. I think we would agree with that. Too involved in politics.
Yeah, earned.
And again, we don't understand sometimes that the younger generations probably have some very different ideas than the older generations do. And so, again, I talked about this on Sunday about these obstacles we put between us and Christ, people that are trying to get to Christ, and we're throwing up obstacles. And I'm not talking about, cultural issues that are wrong. We would agree that abortion is wrong. And even though the younger generation might say that it's right, we're not going to say, but when we divide over political lines and separate ourselves in these kind of camps, we alienate a whole group of people that are part of the church and should be trained and taught and allowed to come along in their theology and in their growth. And someday maybe they'll vote the same way you do, but maybe they don't right now. and we don't make a lot of room for that.
Right. And again, we've made the primary thing, politics and not Christ.
Yeah.
And so, we have, convictions that we're going to stand on and hold to. But at the end of the day, we're not promoting politics.
Well, in all
we're
fairness,
not promoting a certain, candidate or way of voting or anything like that. And that's where you just see churches go off the rails and, attaching themselves to a candidate or a political party.
Well, that has become a tactic for growth in the last 5 years.
Yeah.
Is being very politically vocal from the pulpit. And I think even younger people have been attracted to some of that.
Yeah.
So like it is something that's being used as a strategy.
Sure.
But you are in that, like you already talked about, there's a whole nother group of people, missionally speaking, that you're probably isolating because of that. But it will grow at church.
Yeah.
We all know it'll grow at church.
Yeah.
So.
Next one is no social mission or social engagement, which is extremely important to millennials, to Gen Zers, that we're engaged in social, kind of trying to make the world a better place kind of stuff, as opposed to being kind of lazy, turned in, aimless. The church for a long time has had a lot going on as far as theology, but we've been very insular, and they see that and they don't like it, and I think they got a point.
Sure,
I do. Yeah, I mean when our scriptures and everything that we teach from the pulpit has to do with feeding the poor and clothing the poor and loving your enemy, and then the church puts itself away.
Yeah.
Right, to where it has no possibility of walking in any of those things. That's an obvious blemish. Like they're looking at that hypocrisy and going you guys talk all this stuff, but none of you do anything. And and the younger generations, for all of their problems and flaws, they have that.
They do.
They want to activate. They want to be activists. They don't want to just talk about something. They want to see something done. And so wrong, or indifferent.
Maybe not to the right end.
Right, wrong, or indifferent.
Yeah.
They have at least this thing in them that says, let's not just talk about this. Right. Let's do this.
Right.
The church could use more of that. Right. Let's not just talk about this or hear Jesus tell us about this. Let's do this.
But again, the end goal for the Christian is so that people can know Christ.
Oh, for sure.
Through what we're doing,
for sure.
That they meet Christ. That we're not just doing a temporary thing to keep them, kind of subdued or comfortable for a little while until eternity starts. But we actually are trying to win them, to Christ. And so that's where it can go. It can be just an exercise in futility if all they're doing is just social engagement with no end goal.
We go off the rails when when social justice is the primary thing,
Correct.
which we see a lot of churches making that their primary thing.
Yeah.
And churches should be engaged in kind of social justice type
Well, it becomes
issues, right? But we also go off the rails in the other way when we look at churches to say, okay, they're social justice is a primary thing. Well, we're not going to be like that. We're going to be all about the gospel and the word, and go too far the other way and never do anything because people do it wrong over here. And so we kind of err on opposite extremes.
One of the ideas that came in was the younger kids can get together with, families can bring their kids in and then go plant trees or something like that for older people in the community. It's a great idea. But again, rather than have a day where you create a program and a time period and all that, if the church was just simply existing as the church and you found out about an old lady in the congregation who had a need, and maybe a neighbor who had a need, that's all built in already. You can just kind of, and that's what community groups do is they meet each other's needs and they meet the community's needs without having to schedule something, or create volunteers or make it a lot of work. So the next one is this one I heard over and over and over again. When my kids come to your church, they're bored. It's not fun.
Your church, Brett?
They even said my church.
They need to try. Lapine. It's not boring. It's not boring.
All about perspective.
Might not be safe. No, I'm just kidding. But it's not boring. I'm just kidding. This is a hard one because you guys remember what it's like when you have young kids and you want them to enjoy church and you don't want it to be boring. But what do we do with this? Because
I wish this is a tough one because I wish I knew then what I know now, or I wish I thought then like I think now as a believer, but I simply didn't. And one of the reasons why families with young kids will pick or choose the church they go to is absolutely your kids. Your kids are going to be at the top of the list of priorities of why you pick. You want them to be taught well. You want them to have other friends. You want them to make other friends that you think are going to be good for them. You know what I mean? Yeah. You do want them to halfway want to go to church instead of, think that they're going to a funeral every Sunday,
Right.
like those things matter. And at the same time, like I never mind, I lost my train of thought. Like
Okay, boom.
mature me would say it just went, what? You gotta help me get it out when my brain starts doing that.
I was excited. I couldn't wait to hear what you were going to say next.
Well, and then it went away. It was just like squirrel. And I was like thinking about the pastrami sandwich. I wish that old me could go back and have known, some of this back then, that like it's okay that my kid, like the priority is not that they like, it's that they're learning what's important to us, and they're learning why it's important to us.
That's really it.
Life is not fun. It's not all about you being entertained, but it is all about truth and important things. And we can train our kids from a young age to think that way and to know that, to be let in on that little secret, And so, there's just things I totally would have done different. But it's not unreasonable for a family with young kids to go, okay, we need to find a church. We just moved to this town. That's kind of like, for that to be there, what's the children's emphasis like, ministry like? It matters.
Well, like so many of the things that we've talked about, it's taking a good thing and just overemphasizing a good thing, and taking a good thing that maybe was never meant to be a primary thing and putting it in, a primary position. And, to your point, we want, good things for our kids, and we want them to enjoy church, but is that a primary thing?
Yeah.
Maybe not a primary thing.
Well, and again, it goes back to the idea of fun. I mean, when you think about all the parents are involved in right now, it used to be that sports stopped on the weekends, like Sunday, there was nothing going on. Now it's all going on. And so there's so much that's competing with, these kids' attention for fun.
Right.
And the church we're never going to come
Would
close
you
to
rather
that.
go play baseball or go to
I
church?
shouldn't say that. There are churches that are actually beating out the world in their fun.
There's churches I want to go to right now
it's
to
like
ride the rides.
It's like going to an amusement park where you show up.
Wait,
and it's
is that a
bouncy
ball
houses.
pit?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That does exist. But I mean,
Yes,
when
it
we're
does.
talking about just like a place like this, we're never going to be able to compete with the fun that the world is offering them.
Right.
So at that point, then, like you guys said, the parents have the responsibility, and I put this back on them, to let their kids know the value of what we're doing at church. We get to go to church this week. We get to come into the presence of God and be with God's people, and hopefully find engagement for their kids to where they're a part of the church, not just an attender or not just sitting in the audience bored, but that they have something to do, and we need to help accommodate that. But all the Sunday school stuff and these are all big machines to feed.
Yeah,
they're big machines.
They take a lot of volunteers, a lot of time, and you want to get good volunteers that are passionate about what they're teaching your kids, and that's all hard to do. So it really comes back down to the parent.
Yep.
Making this a priority for their family,
Right.
and kind of training them up in this culture.
Not to sound like a stick in the mud, but like just the obvious, again, something I've learned the more that I've grown up and looked at this is how much are we actually robbing them by providing them with the motive of coming to be entertained and excited. Are we actually like removing the very thing that we want them to get the most by providing this other thing that's saying, look over here. Don't look over here.
That's deep.
Look, you know what I'm saying?
Well, this goes back to what we say over and over again. I think it was James Montgomery Boyce that said this: what you win them with is what you win them to. And if you win them with fun, the only way you're going to keep them coming to church is when, you got to keep the fun going.
Yeah.
And what we see this in churches where they turn a certain age and it's like, well, the fun stopped, so I'm not coming anymore.
Right.
And that's a bad reason to come to church. And again, we're probably not going to do it as well as the world. And so you're going to find that the kid at some point is going to go, whoa, this is way more fun if I'm, if I'm loaded and, promiscuous. And, again, if there's no value for the church and for what it really is, then we're not going to compete with that kind of fun.
Right.
At all.
When our kids were young, we went to a couple churches that were pretty robust with their children's ministry and kind of exciting. But we went to one church that wasn't. It was completely different. You might say it was Puritan-esque. It was very bing, bing, bing. Like we don't do these things. And so the kids sat in there with us. Sometimes the sermons were super long and heady, not even directed towards the kid, which I'm not saying is good.
Sometimes I was bored.
It was sometimes the adults were bored. It was pretty traditional and stripped down. Like there was nothing there that the kids would like. But my kids, as they have gotten older, have all referred back to that period of time in that church as some of the most formative in their Christian thinking, as far as things that they actually got, as far as the importance of Christianity, something that they learned from the Bible, even community in the way it was done, integration in the way it was done. Like, I still look back and have like a bad taste in my mouth about some of it. Like, gosh, that was dumb. I can't believe, but at the same time, like that, it being so stripped down, like, and they were young, like the kids were young at that time, and they walked away like God showed them some stuff and taught them some stuff. Yeah. Because it was a look here.
Yeah.
Not look here.
Yeah.
So
that's good. We're going to run out of time before we get through what I've got going here. So I'm just going to, some of the other reasons, I'm just going to run down this list. And if I, as I say them, if you guys want to comment on them, just speak out. But some of the reasons we're seeing why people have left the church and haven't come back, COVID obviously is a huge one. That just gave people a reason to make an exit and kind of be gone for long enough that nobody's going to notice. We see just a general cultural shift in our world right now. We're in a post-Christian time. Church just isn't important to people right now. A lot of people say it's not relevant to their life. It lacks substance or relatability, and so there's just no reason to really come. The rise of self or self-directed spirituality, because it's funny that they're saying church attendance is dropping, but spirituality is actually rising, increasing. But it's this self-directed spirituality, whatever that means. I saw that on Carrie Newhoff's page. I like that term.
Positive thinking.
But it is, the rise of self is huge. And so, that's something we're seeing. Not wanting accountability, that's always been a thing, but that's why a lot of people don't want to come to church. Better community or finding community elsewhere, maybe
like
not
the bar.
better.
Yeah.
But,
the pub.
CrossFit, the bar, whatever it is, there's
sure.
other opportunities for community, whereas the church used to kind of be, that's where some people found it.
Yeah.
Even if they didn't know Jesus or want Jesus, they found community.
That's why it used to be in the center of towns. The church
Right.
would sit in the middle of it because it's where everything happened in town.
The more we move to the margins, other things kind of take up the center, the more we're kind of seeing.
I can't remember who it was years ago. Somebody wrote like kind of a theory about what they called the third place. And so like your first place is your home and your second place is your work, and then everybody has a third place. And that's, the bar, it's the club, the country club, or, whatever. But,
the gym.
The gym, your third place. Wow. And I think the third place is, on the, changing positions from the third place to, maybe moving up to the second place.
Well, then social media, that fake community that exists.
Yeah, you want to talk about a third place.
Yeah.
Seriously, you feel like you're connected to something.
The first place, actually.
You're not at all. Yeah. You're sitting on your couch, but you feel like you're connected to some kind of community, which also brings us to another one that we see is the stinking live stream, which I know we struggle with. But you can kind of.
Some of us do.
Yeah.
Well, we struggle with.
We have a love-hate relationship.
Yeah, we have a love-hate relationship where it's like, again, we're providing something that allows people to stay away from community. And the other thing is that there's a lot of better options out there, probably, as far as, if they don't like this church, that church, has a way better live stream. And again, you have a false sense of connection and community, but it's not real. But it's keeping people away. Just too many things competing for people's time. I already mentioned that. There's you only have so much time. And when I look at parents' lives right now and their kids and what they're doing, they're running this way, they're running that way. A lot of mom and dads are both working. When we were younger, it was more common for, only one to work. And so, they've got to be just literally exhausted. So, you have to prioritize what's important to you. And at some point, the determination is, we'll go to church once a month, maybe, if it's fun, but we're not going to make that a priority.
There's an appeal to sleeping in and catching the live stream later that I get.
Yep. But a lot of this comes down to just a lack of desperation, maybe a low view of the church and just a lack of desperation.
Oh, well, I think you already said a lack of priority.
Yeah.
Like if Christ is that important to you in your life, then the things of Christ will be. Like the things that Christ followers do will be. That's really, if we just cut through it, that's just, and you don't mean to be that harsh or to call somebody out that straightforward, but it's simply true. We find a way to do the things that we believe are important in our lives. And
can we fix that as the church, as pastors? Can we fix that?
No.
Isn't that the frustrating part?
We can't make somebody want it more. I preach every week, and I know you guys do too, to try to fix that. I preach in a way that I want people to be changed when they walk out of there, to have that fall in line, the priority, the just the value of
Right.
Christ in their lives be different than it was the week before. But I can't make it happen.
Right.
Yeah, that's the exasperating part for me is like I want to accommodate when I hear these things, and it's like how can we get these families and how can we connect them? But at some point, if that's not a priority to them, and I have to do these fun and games things and satisfy them with whatever these programs and things are in order to get them to come. I mean, how exhausting is that?
Right.
And at some point, how do you compete with all the other stuff that's going on? It's like it seems weird. And I guess I wanted to turn to you guys and ask you, when you were young, and your families were young, did you guys pretty much go to church every Sunday?
Yeah.
Why? 3 times a week?
3 times a week, every week.
Why?
Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night. So that's why
What was your incentive?
I'll just kind of like cut to it. Like that's the reason why me and Carrie, as young Christians that weren't even serious Christians, once we got married and had our first child, made church from that point on without even questioning it a part of our lives. It's because I saw it. I lived in it growing up. Like it mattered to my parents. It was everything. It was that thing in our family that says this is what our family does. And because we didn't waver from it and we didn't take vacations from it and it never became casual or recreational, that was built into me. Like this is what you do when you're a Christian. Like your life reflects Christian things. It does.
Yep.
It goes to where God is. It goes to where His people are. I was an idiot on so many levels, but I got that, and I knew that it meant the same thing for me when I started following Christ. Is like This is a non-negotiable, and for my kids and my house, this is going to be a non-negotiable. So I know that's a little different than with most people, but it was modeled for me that that's what a Christian does when they follow Christ.
And I want to point out that had to have been challenging. I know it was because I had 5 kids trying to get everybody going the same direction on a Sunday morning and going to church. It's so challenging.
There was every reason not to do it
Right.
most Sundays.
Yes.
If we wanted to find a reason why today is not going to be a good day for this, we would have had one almost every Sunday.
Chad, how about you?
I would say the same thing. It was just instilled into me, my whole life. Growing up, church is just what we did. It's what our family did.
Right.
And so by the time I got to adulthood, it just was kind of habit. For lack, I don't mean to degrade it by calling it habit, but it was routine. It was just what you did in life. And I became a pastor right out of high school, and so then I had to be there because of that. There was that dynamic, of not being able to miss it. But pretty quickly, I began to value it.
Yeah,
and I think even it was probably in my high school years where I really valued church more than I did prior to that. And so just modeled for me like it was for you and just
Well, and
part of life.
the cool thing is that your parenting, your marriage, your finances, all these things that we want to learn about and to be better at, they all kind of naturally. That's what the benefit of the church was. Is these things began to happen as I formed these relationships with people and committed. Not just Sunday mornings. This was about being in
this
community
is a
groups.
Lifestyle of being around these people.
To where you're really invested in that.
Yeah.
I will say that one of the things, if I'm being honest, that motivated me to go was guilt. There was an incentive for me to take my family there because I didn't want them to think I was a bad Christian or a bad dad. And we've seen in our culture a disappearance of guilt is what I would call it.
Yeah.
There is no pressure to do that really. Not like it was when we were doing it. And so that's kind of gone. And I'm glad that was there because on one hand, it's kind of a bad motivator, but it was a motivator.
Yeah, but a motivator nonetheless.
But I just like you said, it got to the point where, and it still happens today. Sometimes I'll be like, I don't want to go, but I have to go, and then I go, and I'm like, that was awesome.
Right, I'm glad I went.
I'm glad I went, and that happens more often than not. And so
Yeah.
Well, even bad motives, I think.
yeah, absolutely.
Like God can use that, right?
Right.
So like my bad motive was that it was a thing of religiosity because I saw my parents do it religiously, and they never veered from that. And so by saying like that's just what you do if you're a Christian, I did it for a few years to check the box and go, oh, cool, like I'm doing it. I'm doing what my parents did.
Yeah.
This is what Christians do. There was a point, though, around 21, 22 where something shifted, probably just got, saved again. And I actually started valuing and absorbing what was going on there and realized, oh, this is actually life-giving. So it's not just a place you go to see these people. There's actually life-going things that are being imparted to me here. And then it became a thing of ownership, where it was appropriated to me. But the motive was bad. Yeah. Originally, it was just like, I'm checking the box because this is what Christians do.
Well, I think we've all seen probably over the years, people who, they participate kind of in the function of the church, right? They show up to Sunday mornings and are maybe, faithful Sunday morning attenders. Maybe come to a midweek service, but then you see people that are involved more in the life of the church. Like there's a difference there. Yeah. Attending the events of the church versus being involved in the life of the church.
Inner and outer circle.
Probably, we've all had, that moment where, the life of the church has taken on new meaning and has become, important to us more than just the function of the church.
Yeah. No, and it's a huge transition from, just going to church to actually being a part of a church.
Right.
And the other thing that I was just going to point out is there's a sense in which you cannot improve upon the church. What God has made it to be, what He's designed, is something that you can't really improve upon. It's an amazing.
Well, what it already does.
Yes. What He's designed and the way He's designed it. Again, Acts 2. I mean, doing it the way He's designed it to be.
Doing.
You can't make that better.
Everyone comes together. Seems to be multi-generational.
Right. Yes.
To sing, to pray, to be washed to hear the Word of God preached.
Yeah.
To break bread.
Yeah.
Like we don't need something else.
No. And when we don't value that or recognize that, we have a low view of that, and then we try to improve upon it with things that are not really improvements. That's just a hard thing to try to. It's a hard line to walk. And yet at the same time, I know that there are things we can be doing at the door that would probably enhance somebody's desire to want to come or be here or whatever. And we always want to be sensitive to that without compromise. We're not compromising what God's word says, or we're not, doing a bait and switch thing where I don't know. That's always a challenge. So pray for us in that regard, please, because we're always walking that line of
it's a bit of a tightrope.
It is, because it's important to have young families. We would love that. Maybe pray to that end even. But
it could be a challenge too, because there are 100 things you can do to build a church.
Sure.
Like there's probably a few things we could do tomorrow that would immediately shift something somewhere. But there's also things that the church can spend all its money and all its time and all its energy in and never see anything happen. You're just hitting your head up against a wall because of so many other factors that are just God factors, and even just your where are you at? Is it populated? Is it not? Is it rural? Like what's, what kind of people live there? What kind of community is it? And so you could be trying to make something happen to look like this church over here that is never going to happen, because of just where you're at, and the factors involved. You know what I mean? So, we do need your prayer on things, and what we're pushing forward in, and why we're doing it, and what we shouldn't. And anyway.
I think there's a couple questions people tend to ask when they think about church. What do I want out of church, or what's important to me? And maybe those aren't the right questions to be asking. Maybe it's more to do with what does God want? What's important to Him?
Why did you say maybe?
Well, that was supposed to be more of a maybe you should consider that there's a better question to ask. I was being, I guess so. Subtle.
Don't ask those questions.
Yeah. A better question, not maybe, is what does God want, or what's important to Him? And I
or
would
what
say,
can I do here? What can I bring to this?
What's the church?
How can I add
to
to what God's doing?
Absolutely.
But I think if we answer the question, what's important to God, what would He have me do? The answer is obvious. Plug into a local community, invest, become accountable, all those things. Pour your family into this thing, and it doesn't mean it's going to be the door. There's lots of churches out there, but it would be great if it was.
Yeah.
But when you do that, when you take that kind of that next, that full immersion, kind of full contact Christianity kind of mindset, it's where the church really functions and flourishes. And it's where a lot of these things, these claims that people have made and these reasons they've left begin to take care of themselves in community.
I think about 1 Corinthians 14, 12 and 14, Paul's talking about, spiritual gifts in the church and, spirituality and these kinds of things. And there's a point where he says, if you want to see a real manifestation of the Spirit, strive to excel at building up the church. Yeah. And so the encouragement to the Christian is, your approach and your mindset to church is, what can I contribute to this? How can I add to it? Like you just said. And that's God's design that we wouldn't approach church as consumers saying what's in it for me and what can I get out of it, but how can I contribute to it and add to it? And you'll find that when you do that you get something out of it. Yeah. And then I also think of, a pastor buddy of mine who, is trying to build in the DNA of his church. Like he would say, invite people into your lives before you invite them to church. And the idea is that, that you would make relational connections with people and not necessarily lead with, hey, do you want to come to my church? But like, hey, come into my life and come to my house for dinner, and you'll get to know my family and I'll get to know yours. And then, maybe you'll become a part of what we're a part of.
Yeah.
And so, for, again, Christians looking to bring, another demographic into the church or certain people into the church, invite people into your lives and just see what God does with
Well,
that.
then that makes just Sunday mornings kind of the cherry on top of
Yeah.
everything else, which is, that's not the main event.
Right.
When you try to make that the main event, it's not really probably going to work very well.
Well,
Right.
for a non-believer, it's not
Yeah.
not going to be a great main event.
No, exactly. Yeah. No, it's, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. How about that?
Pastrami. Not even that hungry. I don't know why I keep thinking about it.
Chad, maybe you should pray because you were probably not focused on the sandwich right
I'm
now.
not. I'm starting to think about I might get pastrami today. It's
You
not my
should.
norm, but I might get it.
You should. That would be a right decision.
Well, we'll see what the special is today when we get there.
He just inceptioned you.
Yeah.
You didn't even know it.
Is that what the little spin of the phone was?
Did you see it?
Yeah.
You want to see it again?
Yeah, do it again. All right, let's pray. God, we're thankful for today and just thankful for our conversation. Pray that it would be helpful to people. Just pray that you would help us as a church as we endeavor to grow and to bring people in, that you would help us to do so in a way that's good for the church and glorifying to you. Pray that people would come to faith in Christ through our efforts, and that you would help our church to continue to be a light here in our community, and help us as pastors just to have wisdom and discernment in what that looks like as we move forward. And we ask it in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen. All right. Thanks for tuning in.